Hello and welcome to News Center. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Ritu Singh joins me from the Bengaluru studio. After multiple extensions, the Reserve Bank's tokenization norms are finally coming into effect from the 1st of October. The central bank believes that the tokenization transition will prevent misuse of sensitive information that we share with merchant websites while making a transaction using debit or credit cards. Ritu, for the benefit of our viewers, in short, what is tokenization?
Well, as per RBI's mandate, tokenization is going to replace your sensitive payment credentials or the details of your 16-digit credit and debit card number with a unique ID, which is going to be called a token. You can use this token for making any online payments without actually having to fill in your 16-digit card number each time you make a transaction. The RBI norms also mandate that merchant websites can no longer save this card information. Only banks and authorized card networks can do so. For customers, the benefits are two-pronged. First, a quicker checkout experience and an extra layer of security for your card details. So both ways, it is a win for customers. Perhaps not the same story for merchants.
Right. This looks good on paper, Ritu, but is the industry ready? We will discuss that and much more with our guests. Let's introduce everyone. Vishal Mehta, Chairman of Merchant Payments Alliance of India, is with us. Ashish Agarwal, Vice President and Public Policy Head at IT industry body NASSCOM. Harshvardhan, Digital Payments Head at Policy Bazaar. We also have Aruna Sharma. We spoke to her a short while back, and we will be getting you her view in a while from now. But before we go to Aruna Sharma, Vishal, if I can come to you. Now, the RBI deadline on card tokenization has already been extended 3 times. It's unlikely that it would be extended again. What is your concern now about the industry readiness?
So the concern is two-pronged. First, we have 2 types of transactions if we look at all the merchants. One is the one-time transactions, which you do on your day-to-day shopping, on Amazon, Flipkart, or the e-commerce websites. And the other is recurring or subscription-based transactions, which would be on websites like Netflix, Microsoft, Google, and Policy Bazaar as well. While the one-time transactions, and when it comes to tokens, there are two aspects again. One is the provisioning of the token, and the second is processing of the transaction. While the provisioning seems to be working very fine, I think we have no challenges there. The processing of transaction on tokens for one time is still not to the level at which the PAN-based transactions were. It means when you entered the 16 digits of the card and the transaction was being processed, it's not to that level. We were seeing about 85 to 90% success rate, and right now we are only seeing about 60 to 70% success rate. So definitely it's going to impact business, especially for those transactions which have a shorter span of time in order to complete the purchase. When it comes to recurring transactions, we are even further not ready. There is no clarity for any subscription-based merchants on what is the readiness of the ecosystem for the recurring-based transactions. If you remember last year, there was an e-mandate-based regulation exactly on this date, on October 1st. It got into effect after multiple extensions. And even to date, we see that it's been 1 year, but not every issuer or every bank is ready to process e-mandate transactions. And on top of that, now e-mandates will have to be processed on tokens, and the ecosystem is not ready for that. Even though a lot of payment systems are saying they are ready, but in reality, we haven't seen any concrete data to show that readiness. And as merchants, especially the subscription and recurring-based merchants, we are afraid what will happen to those transactions starting 1st October.
Right. That's a view coming in from the Merchant Payments Alliance of India. Let me also get in Harshvardhan at this time. Harsh, what are your key recommendations to the RBI at this juncture? What will happen if this what will happen on 1st of October as far as the customer interface goes? You're dealing with customers.
I think to begin with, the direction in which we are moving with respect to digital payments is a good one. The initiative taken in the recent past with digital payments have put the focus back on security while increasing the scale to a mammoth level. Our simple ask of the regulator is to enforce a graded action plan with any new guidelines. The graded plan would ensure phase-wise compliance at every level, enabling all the key players to be ready. This would go a long way in minimizing the impact on the end user. This is the only ask as far as merchant is concerned.
Well, Ashish, before I come to you, Harsh, a quick follow-up. At Policy Bazaar, what is your own readiness as a merchant? Have you deleted the customer's data yet, or are you hoping for yet another extension from the RBI?
So let me tell you that at Policy Bazaar, we do not store cards at our end. So we are dependent on the payment aggregators. And we are hoping and hopeful, and we are really positive that all the work which needs to be done at the payment aggregators end has already done. So we are only hopeful that things will work fine on 1st October.
Well, Ashish, what is the readiness of the industry? And I ask because this is not a new rule that has just been brought about to be implemented in a week or a month or a year's time. RBI has been talking about this since 2020. The tokenization guidelines came out last year. There have been multiple extensions. Why is the industry not compliant yet? What's the feedback you've been getting?
So one, I'll concur with the feedback that Vishal just mentioned in terms of the readiness. That's also our finding. But beyond that, to your point, card tokenization implementation is a complex, task. It involves multiple stakeholders, and just because somebody in the chain might be ready, doesn't mean that from a consumer point of view, the transaction can work end to end. And that's the challenge. So if you look at it from a tech industry perspective, there are a lot of SaaS service providers. There are all these OTT content providers. A whole lot of digital technology services are now on subscription model. So, and if you think of them as merchants, they are basically in two categories. One, who have their own payment infrastructure, the larger merchants, probably, and then like Policy Bazaar, who are relying, let's say, relatively on payment aggregators to provide that solution. So I think from a merchant point of view, the key expectation is that we want to avoid the grief, if I might use that word, of last year when we were implementing the e-mandate requirement, and how much we can avoid all of that. And what is needed is adequate testing experience. So just for example, even merchants who have payment infrastructure, the present success rate on recurring payment for them is roughly 30 to 40%. Now, that is not enough to give confidence to really, go live on 1st of October on this system. And for merchants who don't have their payment infrastructure, a lot of them don't really have visibility because they haven't been able to do any sort of meaningful testing itself. So I think from an RBI perspective, the fact that there have been 3 extensions actually demonstrates that RBI is listening to the industry and accordingly adjusting its own expectation on timelines. And the fact that they've given earlier some clarifications around guest checkout and international payments and all of that means that they understand use case and challenges. Now, what we are only hoping is that RBI would also realize that from the industry perspective, there has to be adequate testing experience before this can be actually implemented live in the market. Otherwise, from a merchant perspective, it actually leads to loss of business. So that is something that I think needs to be avoided at this stage.
Okay, Ashish, one more question. We've seen several banks, several card issuers. SBI, for example, has gone on to say that they are ready with the card tokenization rollout on the 1st of October. At the same time, most of their clients, most of the people they deal with are also ready, barring maybe some of the small merchant companies. So do you feel that this would be a small minority which is currently not ready?
So I think we have to go back to the point about what does readiness mean. So, for example, token provisioning is fine, as Vishal also mentioned, right? So it is the experience of actually running the both the one-time payment and the recurring payment, where I think there's some work which is happening in terms of optimization, which is still ongoing. The fact that we have 30 to 40% success rate, we don't know why is it. Is it because certain banks are not ready? Maybe that's one situation, but these are the things which RBI is best placed to examine from a regulator's perspective and make sure that before we actually go live, there is a significantly high level of success rate. So I think that's the stage we're in, and we're in a conversation with the RBI on this. We have written to them as early as this month And I think RBI has looked at it and said that we are observing and we are examining our representation. So we are hopeful that RBI will do what is needed.
Okay, we also spoke to Aruna Sharma, former Secretary at the Ministry of Electronics and IT, for her take on tokenization and what really are her concerns.
The time was given for the readiness of the change of the system. And here in the change of the system, there are many players, right? So each of the players has to be completely ready for it. So this preparedness itself takes time. It's a complete change of system. So therefore, the seeking this extension was very logical. And today you are hearing that the banks are ready. Now all banks have to be ready. So we have to see whether the small banks are ready or not. There has to be a smooth transition to be ensured. And therefore, there has to be a proof of concept. That proof of concept has not happened. And those who are completely dependent on payment aggregators, they are still not ready, right? Then it is equally important that the merchant need access to the bank identification number. That will also take time by the time the whole thing is in sync. Therefore, there is no harm in giving another 5 to 6 months.
All right, that point is taken. It is a chain at the end of the day, and all players have to be ready for the system to work. We have to take a very short break on that note, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment to continue this discussion.
Welcome back. Let's now try and understand whether the industry is ready for the tokenization transition. Ritu Singh has been tracking this story very closely. Ritu, what is the RBI's view when it comes to representations of different bodies seeking more time? And how are the likes of MasterCard, Visa, SBI, how ready are they?
Well, Parikshit, for you to keep in mind, there have already been multiple extensions that have been granted. And like we were saying earlier, this guideline is not really new. It was first spoken about in 2020 with regards to data storage. The tokenization guidelines, rather, were introduced in 2021. The deadline was extended from January to then June and now September end. So multiple extensions have happened. Enough time has been given to the industry. And RBI itself, in its last notice on this, said that considerable progress has been made in terms of token creation by the industry. While we have about 100 crore cards outstanding, overall for the industry, various companies have given statements as to the extent to which they're ready. For instance, take Paytm, which has said about 52 million cards have been tokenized across cardholders of MasterCard, Visa and RuPay as of September. MasterCard said 2 lakh online merchants have been enabled for card-on-file tokenization as of July. Visa said more than 100 million such tokens has been created by Visa, and this is as of June, so more perhaps would have been created since. An SBI card, also like you said earlier, has been ready with the technology to comply come the 1st of October. So in terms of compliance, it does seem that the industry has been making strides, but as we've been hearing from the participants here, perhaps at the merchants' end also there are still some concerns. Vishal, let me toss this to you on that note. In your conversation with the regulator, has there been any sense given to you at all that the RBI may consider yet another extension?
So we have requested for a variety of reasons for which the extension needs to happen. And as you rightly pointed out, one of them has been that as a merchants, we are not ready. And the primary cause of that is, this whole token implementation is a sequential process. So when there's an announcement by a bank issuer like SBI Card, they are ready, it means now BillDesk and Paytm and PayU, who are aggregators and processing with them, now they have to test, comply and ensure that the transactions are being processed in a compliant manner, in a tokenized manner, and then they have to demonstrate readiness. Once they demonstrate readiness, that is when it comes to the merchants for readiness. In all our representations to the regulator, we have always said that give merchants an additional 3 to 6 months after the rest of the ecosystem is ready, and do not club it with rest of the industry saying that industry has to be ready by so and so time. That is never going to happen. We are awaiting RBI's response. We just sent out a representation yesterday and today, and we are awaiting the response on what they think about it. But the idea from an MPI perspective is that the merchants will always take 3 to 6 months more time after the rest of the ecosystem is ready to be compliant and without impacting the business significantly.
All right, Vishal, take your point there. But Harsh, actually, let me come to you. At the end of the day, tokenization is not mandatory for customers. They may or may not choose to tokenize their cards. So while at the back end you need the preparation, but in the worst case scenario, come 1st of October, when the guidelines, if and when, without an extension come into play, the customers can still enter their 16-digit numbers and make the transaction. So are you really expecting a huge disruption even without an extension of the timeline?
However, speaking from a digital payments and recurring payments view, if the card details are not replaced by tokens, the customer might face issue with auto deduction of their policy premium. Additionally, the merchants who do not store the card details and would want to go through the guest checkout method might see a drop in the success rate, as this happened last October. So because we do not store cards at our platform, but in case of recurring payments, it is become very, very important for us, and we are very, very hopeful that the migration before 1st October it is done in a very, very seamless manner. Otherwise, it will be very tough for our customers to reduce the money.
Okay. Now, Vishal, you said that the industry, the merchant payment companies would need at least maybe 3 to 5 months to comply with the tokenization norms, and there is a chain that has to be followed. If there is no change by the 1st of October, what will be the course of action then onwards for you?
So, end of the day, we have to comply with what the regulation is, and we are piping up all our systems to ensure that we are purging all the cards by the deadline. Should there be no extension. The impact of that is that the customers, as Harsh said, the customers will face significant challenges, especially when auto debit needs to happen. I think it is clear that for one-time transactions, the friction point would not be so much. It will still be there, but the customers can still enter their card details and process the transaction through a guest checkout mechanism. However, for a recurring transaction where the customer is not present at the time of deduction, that cannot happen without tokenization. In fact, if the customer does not agree to tokenize the cards, then a subscription or a recurring transaction for them becomes moot. It is, it's not going to happen in the first place. So these are the challenges which the recurring and subscription merchants are really facing. And as we are compliant as a merchant body, and also each of our members want to ensure they are compliant by 1st of October. Our goal is definitely to ensure that all the cards are purged, which is the primary requirement for us, and we will do that should there be no extension. But it will impact our business.
You're saying it's impacting business. And Ashish, give us a sense of the number of companies and who could be impacted, and what will be the financial impact if there has been any sort of assessment, or if you put any sort of view on that to the RBI and the government.
See, last year when we were implementing the e-mandate requirement, we did go back to the industry to get a sense of, what has been the disruption. And we found significant disruption in terms of, renewals and so on and so forth. And this is what we have also communicated to the RBI, that given the experience last year, this time we should definitely avoid this. And clearly, given the fact that a lot of digital subscriptions of services are going to be hit, if, at least on the recurring payment, if it doesn't go through. For merchant, it's clearly disruption in business. And depending upon services which are more critical, where consumer may have the right incentive to immediately figure out an alternate mode of payment other than card, and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of other discretionary kind of payments where it may not be that kind of an urgent response where you would see disruptions happening. So we have communicated all this to RBI. I think the measure is a consumer protection measure, which should actually help the entire industry, including the merchants, in kind of expanding the base and being able to offer more and more, get more and more consumers onto the digital platforms. But what needs to be avoided is this teething trouble of crossing this hump of actually implementing this. And I think this can be done. RBI has been quite, considerate in terms of extending the deadlines. And as I think Arunaji said, it is possible to now look at least from a recurring payment point of view, one more extension to make sure that industry has got adequate testing experience and what is the actual impact in terms of business. I think that we will know immediately from October 1 if it is not extended. I think within 2 months you will know the impact. Yeah.
All right, so we'll see what happens, especially after the 1st of October. But Harsh, final thoughts, we understand most of the concern is on the recurring payment side. What sort of customer awareness initiatives has Policy Bazaar taken to ensure that customers also know that this is going to be an issue and they take steps to remedy that?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, in case of recurring payments, there is no customer intervention is required. All the things has to be done at the payment aggregators and the payment gateways who store the cards at their end, and we do not store the cards. So the important point here is that the payment aggregator has to ensure that the tokens has to migrate seamlessly. If this is the only way, because customers has already given the consent to Policy Bazaar to store his card and do the auto pay deductions on monthly basis. So I don't think the customer intervention or awareness is in this time is required. The more important point is that the payment aggregators and network has to do the work at their end proactively.
All right, and that is what the MPAI or Merchant Payments Alliance is saying, that the payment aggregators are not ready, the payment gateways are not ready as well. Vishal Mehta, Harshvardhan and Ashish Agrawal, thank you very much for joining us on this program. From Ritu and me, goodbye and thanks for watching.